Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from the Sewell studios in Haiku, Maui, Hawaii, March 22nd, 2022. This is the final part in the six-part series, A World in Crises, finding meaning, purpose, salvation, elevation, creation, something remarkably positive, strengthening, enlivening, inducing of kindness, goodness, compassion, finding meaning in the insanity, the madness. And today's sharing, ethical integrity, complex topic, needless to say. Ethical integrity, loyalty, the bond of loyalty, non-betrayal, its opposite. Showing up with, I want to use the word, and I'll use it, all of you, your resources, heightened, dignified friendship, caring as vocation over convenience, loyalty. Loyalty to what? Loyalty to honesty, loyalty to truthfulness, loyalty to accountability, loyalty to the fine emotional, psychological art of accountability to transgressions through speech, action, and thought, and the loyalty to examine how that happened and to commit to the non-repetition of that transgression. Something beautiful about that. And trust. A sense of steadfastness within the domain of ethical and moral courage. A patient, determined steadfastness, a loyalty to the qualities of commitment to fine states of beauty, of friendship, that you can rely on me based upon my commitment to these qualities: trust, ethical integrity, accountability, loyalty, and trust. Okay, let's just dive in. Today, the final talk here as I embark upon the next phase of my journey. I'm onward to Los Angeles shortly, where I hope to continue during my brief time there, these ongoing podcasts and live streams as I see it. The more I live, the more I engage, the more I recognize the value, the power, and the beauty of friendship. And the loyalty to the qualities that illuminate my own personal meaning of friendship. So life-giving to know that each of us have in our lives people that we consciously, mindfully, intelligently, caringly, joyfully, intimately, proactively cultivate the greatness of sustained and elevating friendships. How rare it is in this world to find someone that you can call and or that person anoint you with both friendship and mentorship. Someone where you're inspired to stay in some form of intimate proximity with the regard to learn from her and or him things that matter to you, whether it be in business, psychology, dharma, meditation, filming, editing, writing, theater, directing, producing, communicating, midwifing, whatever it may be that is your unique vocation, livelihood, specialty, art form, and to have people in our lives that have made a vocation, if you will, of those particular expressions in life. And you have an honorable relationship with that woman, with that man, with those people, to keep alive the high artfulness of apprenticeship, of learning a specialty that is beyond the book. You get to see in dynamic action what it looks like to manifest the fine art of acting, of broadcasting, of editing, of producing, of musicality, whether it be a cello, a keyboard, a violin, whatever it may be, a nun, a monk, a dharma teacher, a yogi. So rare to have those types of relationships. And to me, they are rooted, set aside teachers, mentors, and friends, and those rare alliances that allow us not just to evolve the art form, not just to learn the alignment of an asana in yoga, not just to learn how to practice meditation, but the cultivation, if you will, of the finer qualities of ethical intelligence, they're so easy to use these words, moral courage, the patient determination application of virtue in the face of adversity for the benefit of another, you or me. I'm going to stay steadfast in my loyalty to the qualities of conscience and consciousness and dignity and self-respect to elevate under crises rather than turn away. I remember Aung San Suu Kyi, Burma's Nobel Peace Laureate and elected state councilor in her country of Myanmar, where we had done a book together back in 95 and 96 called The Voice of Hope, as she titled it. Not her voice alone of hope, but to actualize within oneself the attributes of hope in action. She was the one who brought forth metta in action, loving kindness in action, compassion in action, generosity in action, dignity in action, revolution in action. These qualities she often expressed along with her colleagues were dynamic energies within inner being that were actualized and strengthened and made real only through the dynamic, conscious, deliberate engagement of them to take them out of consciousness and put them through the portals of thought, speech, and in your hands and through your heart. A revolution of action-based, non-violent expression of love. I so love that. And I saw in my time with she and her colleagues a very beautiful form of indirect apprenticeship. And I can see it now, 27 years later, longer, that I learned so much, not just by watching and listening, but feeling their friendships. It's remarkable, and I'm not a political prisoner, nor have I ever been in prison based upon conscience. These people chose conscience and dignity and integrity over convenience and corruption and violence. They used their conscience as revolutionary, nonviolent weapon to confront dictatorship and violent, oppressive totalitarianism. It was an exquisite apprenticeship, as short as it was, to be among boys and girls, some of them as young as 8 years old, 9 years old, that went to prison based upon showing their alliance with democracy. I met people who went to prison for drawing a picture of a rising sun in the school, and the teacher was compelled, based upon the strident violence of totalitarianism, you must turn in anyone who shows a regard for democracy, such as violent fascism, violent dictatorship, oppressive totalitarianism, cancellation through your right to breathe and to walk. In Burma, they had a long history of putting people in small cages. They called them dog cages, to do what they could to try to quell and oppress and cage their aspiration for freedom. My point is to be among these savants of the heart, these courageous people. For me, they were my family there. I learned so much simply by being in their company and seeing how they related, how so unfragile they were after being years of incarceration through starvation with no blankets and no mosquito nets. I can't imagine going a night without a blanket or a pillow, much less 10 or 20 years. And they laughed and they cried and they emoted and they elevated. They played the music of shared love, a friendship quality that I had never seen in my life and probably never will again in this lifetime, to see people so beautifully show up for one another. Ethical intelligence, trust, loyalty, people who are risking their life for you and for me. It's so rad that we have examples among our species to see this type of breathtaking expression of conscience and dignity and respect and friendship and ethics and loyalty and trust and radiance of a core identity that, I won't use the word incorruptible, but so very close to that quality of steadfast manifestation of ethical courage. Grace, as Aung San Suu Kyi would say, grace under pressure. Grace renewed repeatedly under harsh, unremitting pressure. What an amazing statement to define the meaning of ethical and moral courage. Revolution in action. And here she is today, alone in an undisclosed location somewhere in her native country of Myanmar, imprisoned, going through a mock, radicalized Orwellian faux military trial. Why they go through this? Believing a lie so thoroughly it only defines radical pathology, and pretend as if something just and legal is happening, when everything they do, think, and say and broadcast is nothing other than a pathological deceit, a mockery of justice and integrity, only meant to vilify, to harm, and to shame Aung San Suu Kyi, and to show to the people of the country, those who aspire to democracy, This is what we're willing to do to your leader, a person that they call Mother Sue, someone who's embraced the population, flaws and all, in her and in them, and embraced the archetype of all-embracing mother. To me, those are words, but it points to a radicalization of morality and ethics, the constituents of self-respect. You know, I've interviewed, many of you know that I've interviewed many hundreds of former political prisoners. Some of them now are back in prison, including Daw Aung San Suu Kyi. My friend U Win Tain, in a wheelchair at 80 years old, given 20 years for treason. The list goes on. I sometimes imagine and try to empathize with my friends in Burma who are incarcerated, others who are in hiding, but to even use the word in hiding, they are choosing to be in their own country, to coalesce other people and to support their nation's scream for revolutionary democracy under the pressure of a Chinese infused military dictatorship in Burma. Do not be fooled. Burma is the result of Xi Jinping in China, Vladimir Putin in Russia. They would not exist without the technology, without the spare parts, and without the munitions, without the training, without the jets, without the missiles, without the automatic rifles, without the money, without the loans of Xi Jinping in China and Vladimir Putin in Russia. That is called collusion with evil. I've said it for decades. Please bear with me. Stop now, or Burma will become the next Tibet. And it has. The country, like in Ukraine, is undergoing a genocide of democracy and freedom. There is an absolute hunt on every individual, man and woman, elder and child, who aspires for justice, rule of law, and freedom. There is a war on universal human rights in the country of Burma. It just so happens to be a nation that I call family. And I bring it up here because I'm a flawed individual. It's obvious to those who love me and are near me, or those my enemies who know it. I have my mistakes. I've had my foibles. I still have them. But there's something in my spirit and in my heart that I really feel emboldened by to be better and better with the manifestation of the intelligence of ethics, a caring for truthfulness, responsibility, accountability, rule of law, commitment and loyalty to principles and values, not just to be mindful, just not to be aware of my shortcomings, but to be vocal about those shortcomings, both to me and my innermost tribe of allies, psychotherapists, and existential psychedelic cosmonauts, fellow and sister explorers of the numismatic. Those few people that we do hold each other breathtakingly accountable. Do you have that tribe near you where the priority is not agreement? The priority is the intimacy of an elegant regard for truth-telling, truth-feeling, and accountability, to learn from each other and to learn from our mistakes, to celebrate that victory over corruption. To watch Daw Aung San Suu Kyi and many of her allies and many of her mentors, in fact, her very own spiritual advisor was my long-term spiritual teacher. Many of you know that, the Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita. Very few people in the world know who Nelson Mandela's spiritual guide, advisor, or teacher was. People always refer to the wisdom of Mahatma Gandhi, but very few people ever refer to who his guide, advisors, and teachers were. We all speak to the dream and the beauty and the eloquence of the late Martin Luther King, but very few people know beyond his love of God and Jesus and Christ who his religious, spiritual, meditative teachers, ethical teachers were. And the list goes on and on and on. And just like our late John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King and Gandhi were assassinated, my dear friend in Burma, and I know her teachers well and her mentors well, it is a remarkable act of corporate international propagandist manipulation that created a global corporate-driven manifestation of a lie where she has been vilified, literally, and thrown under the bus by celebrities, by leaders, by politicians, by even sister and fellow Nobel Peace Laureates. So thorough was the vilification and the propaganda that she went from international icon to complicit in a lie with genocide. And just today and yesterday, our government, the feckless Joseph Biden, in his forever wars with the Secretary of State Blinken announcing to the world, indeed, what happened in the Rakhine state of Burma, adjacent to the Bay of Bengal, across the water from India, what happened in the Rakhine state to the Rohingya was in fact genocide. And I guarantee you that Mr. Biden, I guarantee you that Mr. Blinken could not hold 10 minutes of conversation with myself, my colleagues, or those who really know the truth of Burma, the plight of the Rohingya, which is tragic, but there's been a genocide on Buddhist Burmese in Burma. I wrote about it in 1990 called Burma, the Next Killing Fields, after what happened in Cambodia. There's been a genocide on Christians in Burma, the Koreans, and right now there's an ethnic cleansing of them in the north. The same has gone on with the Muslims in more recent time. I won't say what's new, but Daw Aung San Suu Kyi spoke up, and she's criticized and vilified for what she didn't say. Many of you know that my colleague and I, Fergus Harlow, brought forth 4 volumes, over 2,000 pages of finely presented conversations and analysis in our books, Burma's Voices of Freedom. They are the definitive word on the crisis politically and spiritually and philosophically in the country of Burma. Not us. The title is Burma's Voices of Freedom. And those of you who know me intimately, I am not one for collusion. If anything, I err on the side of critical questioning. I've been an investigative journalist and a meditator, flawed as I have been, but I radically prefer truth over complicity and collusion. I've asked Daw Aung San Suu Kyi very pointed questions. I've asked her teachers and colleagues, my book with her teacher, talking about her. I've asked her mentors, U Tin U, the former general of the army under the dictator that imprisoned her. One of my best friends, former monks together after he was released from prison. You, sir, were the son of a dictator that carried out lethal actions of oppression to your own people. What in you was triggered to create such a revolutionary change of character, if you will? From natural-born killer, totalitarian surrogate of a dictatorial father, metaphorically, to oppress your own people in the name of what? Obedience to a doctrine of violence? Please explain to the world the psychology of transformation. It's in these books. The remarkable investigative journalist in Burma, the most renowned journalist in Burma, passed away. Many of you know of him. The lion of revolution and freedom and nonviolence in that country, U Win Tin. I have over 5 hours of finely recorded interviews with this gentleman. 21 years in a prison cell alone in Rangoon. Why? Because he formed with Daw Aung San Suu Kyi and several others the National League for Democracy, the revolutionary party in Burma that was willing out of nowhere, out of the asphalt of 6 decades of violent, oppressive dictatorship after 135 years of oppressive white imperialism, genocidal imperialism from the UK and Burma, after World War II and the desecration of Mandalay and Rangoon with bombers, war, and the trauma, out of that rubble, they birthed a revolutionary democracy. How rad is that? And they knew. My friend U Chi Mung, one of Daw Aung San Suu Kyi's mentors, very dear friend of mine and a mentor of mine, she came to him and asked, "Sir, you've been in this country, you've been to prison numerous times, you've been in the military. I was thinking about going into politics here, as my father was the former general of the army. He formed Burma's army. I'd like to enter politics. What can I expect?" And he laughed. He says, Daw Suu, by entering politics in Burma means one thing: being willing to go to prison. And sure enough, they formed the party. They traveled the country and spoke about the principles of decency and ethical integrity and trust and loyalty, the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 6 decades, families, children, where they did not know anything other than what it meant to live under violent dictatorial oppression. Read Václav Havel's work in the former Czech Republic of talking about what it meant to live under totalitarianism. People were so trained, even post-totalitarianism. They were terrified by conditioning, and it was just paralyzed in their psyches. And they walked hunched over by conditioning as beings with faceless, appearanceless conformity to the oppressors that oppressed them. Creativity had receded so far down into the psyche of the human heart, it was no longer seen or recognized as an option to the condition of the perception that if I am in freedom, I do my art, my dream, my dance, my ecstatic sense of love, all the things that we take for granted in our democracies that are being oppressed at this very moment. Cancel culture is totalitarianism. And it slowly, the flower of freedom began to emerge from the dark soil of totalitarianism. And here we are today. In the madness of this rush to World War III with nuclear weapons on high alert and the possibility of chemical or biological or nuclear how can you even speak about these weapons that are been mass produced by corporate leaders and stockholders all over the world, but in our own country? What are you thinking? A world in crisis, trying to find meaning in the madness? There's so much of me, and I'm doing this film right now called Raw War, and I'm working on it tenaciously and feeling it. So much of me, I don't know about you, wants to escape. So much of me wants to just leave the arena of the earth. All of us know that we're mortal. None of us know when we'll die, but we all know that we're going to deal intimately with the reality of biological cognitive discontinuity. And we will only come face to face with our beliefs sooner or later. So much of me wants to just rebirth to a plane, to a dimension. I know this is phantasmagorical. I'm not on a psychedelic at the moment. But I'm a believer that we live in dimensionality. And there's a part of me, a very big part of me, and I know many of you know this and feel this. There's a huge part of me that wants to consciously escape. That is the very motivation of a nun or a monk who wants to meditate. They want to escape the fearsomeness, the loathsomeness, if you will. Bear with me in this passion. My final talk here, who knows? We'll all die. Maybe I'll die on my flight to Vancouver. Who knows? You want to say it. The loathsomeness of emotional and moral corruption. U Win Tin, the great journalist, told me when I interviewed him after he was released from 21 years of solitary confinement, 2 forms of torture. One is the unthinkable seduction and coercion of those psychopaths in power who understand the possibility of corrupting someone who's even upright and dignified and espouses the values of freedom, but they can be purchased through incentives so that their children have a passport and through connections are accepted to Ivy League colleges, and given opportunities within the culture to have a business interest in oil, gas, rubies, sapphires, slavery, timber, concrete, architecture, mansions. They become rich. And he said to me, torture can be one of coercion to inspire from the unrecognized soil of greed and safety and comfort, selling out your soul and not even knowing it, not even thinking for a second. And when you pause and look at primarily the role of our congressmen and senators and leaders in Washington, why do they call it the swamp? Why do they call people oligarchs of Wall Street, the oligarchs of Russia, the oligarchs of Silicon Valley? It's a indirect way of talking about individuals who are so willing to live in the corruption of their desire for endless amounts of loot and privilege and power. They'll do anything, even kill other people in other autonomous sovereign regions of their own city, home, or planet to continue to add feet to their already 500-foot mega yacht, to add inches to their penis, whatever it is that measures their sense of success and power. It's crazy. The only thing you can do, and I'm going to do it in my film Raw War, is to bring a radically new, nuanced, existential, irreverent, satirical, comedic, hopefully theatrical, revolutionary expression of my own conscience in play and revolution in action, how do you get someone like Xi Jinping or Mr. Putin or Mr. Biden or Donald Trump, any of our leaders around the world, how do you get them to see something that they don't seem to see? It's one thing about talking about us as meditators and yogis and people finally aligned to psychological wisdom, but activism to really point to the transformation of a psychopath. Is it possible to convince a mind that seems to be without conscience to care for the relevance of other life? Is it really possible? To me, that's a very interesting thought. Sayadaw U Pandita introduced me to that thought. He was one of Daw San Suu Kyi's ethical teachers. It's like we've incarcerated a beautiful woman yet again. We've vilified an intelligent woman yet again. We've crucified yet again a highly regarded, principled woman yet again by the men in power who don't like attractive, powerful, thoughtful, deeply educated, humorous, witty, edgy, intelligent, powerful women. Daw Aung San Suu Kyi is edgy, good-looking, educated, smart, a mother, a wife, radically committed to the principles of communication over violence and desecration and domination. Could you imagine running for president and you want to speak about the power of dialogue regardless in the abstinence of violence? Imagine having a president actually who uses the word spiritual and mindful and ethical intelligence. It'd be like, what? Saint Biden? Saint Pelosi? Saint Trump? Saint Blinken? It would be like, what? Is it possible? In ancient India, when you look historically at the records, they had a king Ashoka. For those of you who know, Soka means sorrow. Ahsoka means a mind without sorrow, a mind without empathy, a mind without caring, a mind of a psychopath who committed genocide in northern India, tortured people relentlessly like ISIS, like Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, like Boko Haram to women. And right now, what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Burma, and Yemen, Iraq. Pause for a minute. 1 million people, boys and girls, my sisters and brothers and uncles, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. $7 trillion in Afghanistan alone of our money. There's not even one moment of regard, it seems to me, of hearing the death screams of those buried and incinerated in the land of Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, and everywhere. Unrepentant. The lack, the absolute absence of ethical intelligence, moral courage, trust, loyalty. This is just basic education, correct? There's got to be ways in which we make it more and more of a necessity, a mandatory principled law in our governments, that if you're in positions of high office with your hand on the nuclear weapon, you must be accountable not only to the people. We must study the nature of your ability to embody the principles of Christ, of God, of Buddha, of Allah, of decency. Take away the religion. I want to know that you're a religious being. What does that mean to me? Non-dogmatic Christianity? Dude, you care for life over coercion, compromise, competition, denigration, caring. You're an exemplary example of grace under pressure, of compassion, of love in action. You inspire us, man. You know, I'm a 60s kid. I grew up in a military family with relatives and families also in the military. I heard it every week about the wisdom of our people, our American people, standing up for the principles of democracy. We did not declare war with Nazi Germany and Hitler until he declared war with us. We had to be aroused. But when we're aroused as a country and as a culture of freedom lovers, we act, right? But we need to take care of our country, our people. And what I'm looking for here is healthy expression of principled ethics. Not a rush to war yet again, America, like we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. Hold back. Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, Nelson Mandela said, let's talk about our differences. Listen to Martin Luther King. Listen to Gandhi. Read my book, With Burma's Voices of Freedom. Read 35 freedom lovers talk about the power of ethically inspired communication. If I were a leader, and I am a citizen of the world, I'm championing right now the president of the Ukraine, the president of America, the president and prime ministers of the EU and Canada, Australia, and the president of Russia. Hey man, what are you afraid of? Talk. Come together. Scream at me what an idiot fraud I am, Mr. Putin. Tell me to my face, Xi Jinping, what a liar I am. Mr. Biden, step up to the plate. Talk about your son's collusion with Ukrainian oligarchs. Talk about your son Hunter's collusion with Xi Jinping. Talk about your collusion with China's corporate elite. Talk about your lies. Get a mediator in there. Bring in artists. Bring in the Pope. Take Daw Aung San Suu Kyi out of a prison cell. Bring in your enemy. Bring in your Christ. Bring in your Buddha. Bring in people. Have mediators and moderators. But you know what we're looking for right now is a consortium, trans-United Nations, the feckless United Nations Security Council. Useless. If you're going to the EU, Mr. Biden, bring ethics. And the power of an ethic right now for me is to call off murder, call off deceit, call off oppression, call up accountability. The first week, the first day, the first 2 hours should be how I have lied to my own people, how I have lied to my own family, how I am continually in denial and self-deceit. I want to be accountable to you, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, atheist, whatever it is that you worship at. Show us ethical courage. It's all that's going on right now. The inability to imagine peace like we do in a marriage and a relationship as a father or a mother to our children. We don't beat them. We inspire them through an education of the heart. I went to church. I believed in the message of meaning. Meaning to me meant not believing and worshiping simply the poetic prose in the Bible or later in Buddhism or now at the altar of eternity, but it's to live in practical expression of your relationship to Jesus Christ, God, Buddha, Allah. Manifest love, manifest generosity. My grandmother was a beacon, an iconess of generosity. Yeah, she had her flaws, we all do. But how delightful it was to see someone and her relatives and sisters and uncles and cousins and grandchildren be able to be around a table and to be fed with love and freedom and decency and empowered arguments where forgiveness was intrinsic in the family unit. Yes, there were flaws. I'm looking for more out of Washington. I'm looking for more out of London and Paris. I'm looking for more out of Canberra. I'm looking for way more from Mr. Putin. I'm looking for way more from Xi Jinping. I'm looking for way more from the president of Ukraine. I'm looking more from myself. Come on, man. Come on, women. We have children. There's the unborn. Can we say this enough? Call off the killing. Ethical decency, moral courage, restraint. Study the dynamics of loyalty. Where are you, Jesus, when we need you in the heart of our president, our congressmen, our senators, our corporate leaders? Stop canceling people through your collusion with profit. We are a culture, a country, a globe aspiring to develop the fertility of global democracy. Give Ukraine a chance to emerge from totalitarian oppression. Yes, they've got their faults. Burmese have their faults. Koreans have their faults. Alan Clements has his faults. You have your faults. What's new? What does it take to celebrate the overcoming of our denial of our faults without having to kill in the name of? The second form of corruption, U Win Tin told me, was through violence. Trying to coerce people into the obedience of lockstep with dictatorship called democracy. Propaganda and violence go hand in hand. Trying to coerce human beings to behave like cyborgian slaves, to stand in obedience to a lie. I've studied George Orwell. He lived in Burma for 3 years as a policeman. He understood. He was an occupier of a sovereign nation from thousands of years back. He was in an area of Rangoon called Insane, where the most notorious gulag in all of Asia was built by the British, called Insane Prison. Ironically, that's where most of Burma's freedom fighters and my beloved friends, U Tinu, U Win Tin, and so many thousands of others, lived and breathed. Some were tortured to death. When he was released after 21 years, they tried to coerce him into signing documents that he would not be political. How can I abandon ethics? How can I abandon compassion? How can I abandon love? How can I abandon freedom? You can't make me sign away those ethics. You can't make me abandon my relationship to the Buddha and Dhamma. You can't abandon my relationship to God and Jesus. You might take my cathedral, you might bomb my monastery, but I have it in my heart. No, I can't do that. Went back to his prison cell. Eventually they saw that he would not succumb to the coercion. And he was released after 21 years without a blanket, without a pillow, without a pot to urinate and defecate in, without a mosquito net. He had his teeth kicked in. He was not allowed a dentist for a decade. He had to chew. Imagine a cavity for a month. Imagine a root canal that was infected for 6 months. Impossible. What that man suffered. My point is, we have ethical heroes. Where are you right now, President? I'm asking people all over the world small people, medium people, large people, leaders in our Congress, in our Senate, in the Oval Office, wherever you are, redemption is the guiding principle of God. We all make mistakes, but redemption means that the soul of our cosmos is good and not evil. And we all have access, we have that ability to transcend our collusion with evil and to drop down deeper into the wellspring of a radiant God, a Christ, a Buddha, whatever it is that you worship at and feel that nurtures your integrity. Let redemption shine as bright as humanly possible ever in the world of men and women before there is no world left to save. You cannot talk about a nuclear threat. The next iteration of that is the use of a global annihilation. There is no protection from nuclear weapons. We saw the lethality of a virus, whatever we want to say of where it came and why it was released or how it was released, how many millions have died. Imagine if it was more lethal, how many hundreds of millions would die. Well, the virus of fear, the virus of arrogance, the violence, the virus of totalitarianism through the mind of men and women is globally not only lethal, but it's synonymous with extinction. Extinction of the Homo sapien, extinction of the animals, the birds. There may be a few rats and centipedes that run through the Oval Office and Wall Street, but human life, you will not want to be alive. And I can't even imagine right now, except that I read the statistics and I have friends and I hear friends talk about their friends and who they know, the psychological struggle of the young people today. I had it tough, but I had ethical parents. I grew up in a time of possibility. All you had to do, if you wanted to be an athlete, you could train your mind. And I trained my mind and my body to do as well as I could. I wanted to be excellent. Yes, there were people that I was far better than I was, but I believed in the personal challenge of becoming as good as I could possibly be, and I became fairly good. But it disciplined me, not athletics alone, but it disciplined me, and I had moral parents and moral friends, and I learned how to navigate my own corruptions. Yes, it's obvious I have faults. You have faults. But I loathe violence. I loathe killing. I loathe lies. And I like to know that I feel a loathsomeness, a kind of nausea, a type of cellular religious dengue fever, a malaria of the soul if I deceive or I lie or I denigrate. I don't even like driving thinking that it's killing the future of life. I don't like it. There's a place in me that feels so at two with that, right? You could hypothesize about the difficulty of really being pure in this great world of duality. But let's do what we can right now to call upon our leaders, not to be politically correct or spiritually correct, but to really examine the fundamental virtues of basic spirituality 101. The universal religion that transcends individual religions, that brings all of life together as sisters and brothers in a union beyond our respective gods, beyond our synagogues and cathedrals and monasteries and mosques. There is a language of the human heart. To me, it means ethical integrity. That's not Muslim, it's not Jewish, it's not atheist, it's not Buddhist, it's not Christian or Catholic. Ethical morality. The basis of it is self-redemption. We are born intrinsically with the possibility to overcome our faults, our collusion with greed and evil. Call off the pursuit of power and privilege and money. There will be no future, no stock options, no Wall Street, no mansions, no limousines, no private jets, no yachts, no homes, nothing, if we do not call back this rush to a World War III, a world in crises. So thank you for listening to this series. Thank you for being a part of my life. Thank you for inspiring me to be the best that I can be. There's lots of things that I wish to share. And may I close this series, A World in Crisis, Finding Meaning in the Madness, this six-part of a six-part series. I've released a children's book that's in pre-order worldwide on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. At the moment, it's a hardback only, but the paperback will soon be up. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and on online retailers worldwide right now. If you want details, you can go to my website, alanclements.com or worlddharma.com under the book section. Tonight I met a deva. Deva means an angel, a deity of radiant and ethical intelligence. Tonight I met a deva, an angel of love, and it brings in rhyming, poetic, simple language, for me, the essence of what I feel has been the most inspiring lessons learned in my life through the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. But they're not Buddhas at all. They're really a trans-religious teaching of what it means to be human and challenge difficulty with courage and heart and ethical wisdom. And so please acquire the book. Will you please tell your friends and other friends who have children? It's meant from the ages of 7 to 12, but I think any adult could also read it, and it could be read to anyone younger. It's meant to inspire dialogue, conversation, beautifully illustrated by these remarkable artists that I've met from around the world who've done these magical realist Dharma paintings to anoint the verses in the book. And may I encourage you, please, talk to your library, talk to your schools, private, public schools, bring it into the classroom. I personally feel it's the best work that I've done in my life. Tonight I met a deva, an angel of love, and I've also released, with the support of about 5, 6, 7, 8 remarkable people, Ian Mullett, Terry McGovern, their daughter Gemma McGovern, a World Dharma video book, 37 chapters, 10 hours, along with 61 one-minute little nuggets that I felt, Alan, you can be poetic, you can be inspiring. What is the wisdom 2.0 of your 5 decades of spiritual, psychological, theatrical, artistic, religious pursuit? Just the 2.0. What's the code of that? Leave you out and just talk to me about transformational intelligence. What have you learned through meditation, psychology, activism, theater, arts, intimacy, genocide, war, journalism, parenting? I've done my very best. It's the basis, and more is coming. But World Dharma video book, the Dharma art of mindful intelligence, finding liberation through living. It's a combination of all of my books and more in 37 video chapters, beautifully edited, captions and subtitles. My colleague and assistant, Fergus Harlow, has gone through every one of them and brought detailed notes to each of the 37 chapters. It's on Vimeo on demand. You can go to my website, alanclements.com, under the book section, and you can see how to acquire that book. You can stream it, buy it, rent it, whatever you wish to do. And from my heart to yours, there's other things coming, and I'm also actively involved right now, which is one of the reasons I'm going to Los Angeles, is to further script learn and film raw war. It's going to be my own expression of nonviolent engagement. My very dear friend was the producer of the Rocky series, Bob Chardoff. I married he and his wife in 1990. I stayed at his house and wrote the book Extinction X-Rated. He's passed away. He was a mentor and a friend. I brought him to India. He started a school. I brought him to Burma. He so championed in me Rocky. Not boxing, but there's no obstacle you can't engage and overcome, including your own delusion, your own complicity with fear, your own shortcomings. He was really amazing in that area of both emboldening me, supporting me along with others to face my darkness and my shadow, but not to vilify it, which would fortify denial and shame. Humanize it, but don't give into it, and develop, which was the mantle, the Oscar of his soul was moral courage. And he was a morally courageous individual. But Rocky, this film, Raw War, is my existential Rocky. My battle, both with my own condition, my own diagnoses of my heart challenge, being in hospice, the war in Burma, the desecration of so many things. All of us have faced difficulties. But if I've learned anything and I'm learning anything, there's no obstacle that you can't engage and transform. You may lose, but you win if you have courage and love and compassion and fight no matter what. And that to me is the meaning of the Rocky archetype. And to me, this film, the 3-5-part film series Raw War, is my existential Rocky, both a personal story and a collective narrative of my battle with evil. So, God willing, all these things manifest from my heart to yours. Thank you for tuning in. Stay close, support in the way that you can, acquire these books, and hope to see you down the road. And stay close and have a beautiful day. From my heart to yours. Thank you.